How do you connect with your mentee in a school setting? First is your initial contact. And I know most of the time that's going to be with the social worker, and they're going to sit and you've already met them, you started working with them, but those initial contacts are going to be really important. Initial contact with your mentee, your initial contact with parents in some form or another. You may just meet with your mentee, but at some point it probably would be nice to know their parents or guardian or whomever they live with in some capacity or another, because that's part of the story of getting to know your mentee, is to understand their whole situation. And that might be a face-to-face, it may be just a talking on the phone when you're comfortable getting to know them. In the school setting, it's going to be really important to know who their teacher is or teachers. Now, in an elementary setting, traditionally they'll have one core teacher that they're going to have all day. But once you move into a secondary realm, they may have 5 or 6 teachers a day, depending on. So if you can get to know who their teachers are. Now, when I say get to know their teachers, that might just be that conversation with the students about their teachers. And again, getting to understand their world is really important, and getting to know their teacher and what their teacher's like. Now, once you've done this for a while, if you are comfortable, it does help to get a release or talk to the parents and understand their discipline, what their grades are like, and everything else. It may be in a very casual way that you're going to work with them. And as it was said earlier, we do bracelets, we do crafts, and everything else. That may work well, and what if your mentee teacher says, I really like helping such and such, and it's an academic piece. So you want to be able to have access to that as well. So if you talk to the parent, you talk to the school, and you may be able to gain access if that's what will help your mentee along their path. In the secondary level, you might be nervous and say, God, they've got these classes and I'm not even sure I'm comfortable with classes. It's not about that. It might be just about helping them get organized. And the second part of not my presentation, but the presentation coming up, is about helping them set goals and things like that. And for many of them, I'll give you a story this week. I spent a lot of time with my mentee this week. It is exam week. Day one, we spent 1 hour on his papers, just putting them in the right folder. He had a pile this big, and all he does is keep adding the papers to him, even though he's got a trapper keeper that says math, English. There was not one thing in any of the folders. It's just one big pile. So we sat and we sorted them by subject area, and then we put them in, and then we did them by what the date was on the top or the chapter in some kind of, and that's what we did for an hour. We didn't even talk about the math or the English or anything else, just to help get them organized. And maybe that's what your mentee will just need, just help to get organized in terms of what's going on, or just questions about what's going on in their schooling. If you are able to introduce yourself to the parents, terrific. If you are not able to, or you can't get a return, it still is okay. Just continually try to make that connection with parents. Parent is a big piece of that. In the office, when you go to the school, make sure you check in. Every school has a check-in process. If you've been doing it already, terrific. Just make sure you continue to do that. Sometimes even I get really comfortable. I mean, I'm the superintendent and most people know me, but our kids are so well trained because the way the world is today, there are kids in our district that say, Dr. Reeder, you don't have your card on. Because sometimes I don't wear my badge or the kids who don't know me. And they'll stop me and ask me who I am. Because if I stop in the office, there is a badge for me to put on, or I have a lanyard or something that I would wear. So it's really important that you stop at the office. Plus, I think almost all the offices have a check-in folder for you to write your name and where you're going to be working and everything with your student, because they're trying to keep track of all of that with us. So please check in and get to know that secretary, because there might be a day, like we had last week, maybe the school's not canceled, but it's so hard for you to get there, you got to call in. So it's nice to call in and say, hi, Holly, hi, Mrs. So-and-so, this is, and I'm supposed to be in to see my mentee and I can't get in there today. So get to know that person in the office. You'll probably see them as much as anyone. If you have any issues, they can help you in the office. Issues with maybe the location that you've got set up is not working really well. Connect with someone in the office and connect with the person that leads in that building. If you need to be connected into how to get into the electronic system. If you secure permission and you're allowed to look at and help them with their grades, or you want to find out about their attendance, almost all the systems are done electronically. And you can get on an online system and you have a linkage, and so you don't even have to be in the building and you can see how they're doing. Make sure that you understand the rules and the expectations around the school when you're there. And when I mean the rule and the expectations is there's rules for every single teacher. And if you're always going the same hour, you just got to know what that teacher's rules are. It's a little different in secondary, and my students in secondary, I don't ever pull him out of class. This week, it's half days, so I've spent lunch plus with him each day getting ready for exams, but I don't pull him out of class. He needs to be in class. You might have an opportunity, especially in elementary, to be able to pull them out of class, but you need to know where they are and where they're not if you're not there on your typical time all the time. If you can form a continuous, ongoing connection with the parents, that works out really good. I just started my conversations with them. I'm fortunate that I took them to a game in the fall, got to meet the parents right off the bat, and now when I call on the phone, if they answer, I talk with them for a little bit before I talk with my mentee. My mentee this week has been meeting with him at noon during lunch, and then I have all his vocabulary words, and then I call him 2 more times, early in the evening and late in the evening, and I quiz him over the phone. So he struggles with his vocabulary, so we just talk, and we talk a little bit more, and it's only another 5 minutes, but last night I didn't get the second call in until, it was almost 9:45. I know he goes to bed about 10 o'clock, and he's like, oh, I didn't think you were gonna call, I was waiting, and I'm thinking, he's not excited about school, but he knows that I was supposed to call. So I've already got that set up, and then today, there was some stuff going on with the buses, so I was a little slow getting there. I was wondering if you were gonna come. And so he's already set up that I'm coming at certain times, and he's got that expectation around that. And your mentee will have the same thing. Whether you feel like, oh, am I really making a difference? Do they really care if I come? You'll be surprised how quickly they'll start to bond with you. For some reason, he's already connected with me, and he's really looking forward to that, and I'm trying to hustle and bustle over there, and he's just real calm. Oh, I'm glad you made it. I was wondering where you were, and we'll go in the other room, and everything seems to be working just fine. If needed, support in the way that you're comfortable. If you're not comfortable with something, don't ever do it. I mean, even in the coursework and stuff they do, if they're writing a paper and you're not comfortable with paper, work on something else. And again, it might be very casual, it doesn't have to be educational in mold. But if you are really good at something that they're working on, then try to get into that area that you can help. In elementary, there's some real basic things, basic facts. They may have to learn their letters, they're learning to write, they're learning to read. When you get into secondary, it does get more challenging, but do what you're comfortable with. You may need, or you may hear from your mentee, things that challenge you a little bit. And what I mean by that is, they don't like a certain teacher. I mean, you say, what's going on in that class? You don't seem to be doing your work, or or they may say, I just hate Mr. So-and-so. You can just leave it at that. You may say, well, what's he do that, challenges you? And you might feel comfortable at some time to be able to talk to the teacher about it. And that's not to blame the teacher, but just understand what's going on in that situation. Sometimes they, especially for older kids, they equate the teacher to the subject matter. I don't like math, so I'm not going to like the teacher that teaches math. So it just depends. Sometimes there is an issue, and you might have to advocate for them. And when I mean advocate, doesn't mean you have to do anything maybe other than listen to them. And then maybe give them a pointer. Hey, maybe you need to go talk to Mr. So-and-so. If anything comes up that doesn't seem right or makes you feel uncomfortable, then seek someone out. There's the social workers at schools, there's the lead person at the school. Something that you just doesn't seem right, you need to go to them. It could be something they confide about their household, and you're like, wow, that really makes me feel uncomfortable, and I just feel like someone should know about that. It doesn't mean you have to do any more than take it to the school personnel and just say, hey, this is what they said, I just need to tell someone. You don't always have to, just like I didn't. If you cannot make personal contacts, email them, call them. Email, call them. You'll find some that love the text with you and they're much better and more comfortable in the text for now, or email, that's fine. If you can talk to them on the phone, terrific. And sometimes just keeping that ongoing connection, if you can't be there that day, don't be nervous, don't worry about it, just use the other modes in order to connect with them. If I didn't get there today, he would have been okay. I might have felt a little guilty that I didn't get over there. He would have been okay, but I could have connected with him in multiple other ways. So use the other modes of communication in order to connect with them. You normally are there for an hour. I heard several people say, oh, an hour goes so fast. Maybe you're there someday and it can't be an hour. You only can get there for 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be the same way every single time. Just being there is enough for them in some form or another. For me, and I found this week with exams, and it's the second part of that first bullet, he needs a lot of contact. They don't have to be long ones, but he needs a lot of them. If I didn't call him at night, I set a goal for him when he left. He was to get an assignment done, and he was to work on his vocabulary. So every morning I also want to check on him. I mean, the last 4 days I've met with him 4 times a day. And it's huge for me with him because my mentee has made incredible gains. He failed every single class last year. He's passing every one now, but 4 of them are right where he can tip. So the exam week is incredibly important for him. And after 8 or 9 weeks of having what hasn't been success, I don't want it to tip the other way. He needs to feel much better, and this is a big week for him. So, in the morning, my contact with him is just to say, hey, make sure you got your paper. Remember your work-any paper, your vocabulary. Get him to relax. He's very uncomfortable in school, but he's incredibly pleasant. I never heard so many thank yous this week. That's all I hear. So I've got a really good neighborhood for trick-or-treating. Many of the kids are so good about saying thank you. I mean, I've heard thank yous from him constantly. Thank you for coming over. Thank you for helping out. You know, you've been here a lot of times this week. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So he's very appreciative for the help. And with him, and it may not be as important with your mentee, I have to encourage him. Every little thing is going to help with him. Eventually, someday I won't have to do it as much, but as much as he says thank you to me, I have to keep encouraging him. If he gets it wrong, it's no big deal. We'll keep trying. We're working on the vocabulary. We did it in 4 different content areas. You know, we went through one list today, 22 words, 0 the first time around. And I'm going to try to get him, and he's got to take that exam tomorrow. By the time we're leaving, he's up to 11 or 12. And he knew them going in any order and everything else. He could give me an example. He was nervous, he was struggling. Just keep working with him. We laugh about it a little bit. We try to get examples that he can relate to. So you've got to do that, and so they need that affirmation. Make sure you check on the grades and attendance. I can't bring that up enough. If you can, make sure, if they're struggling with getting to school, they may meet with you, but if they're having trouble with attendance, it helps for you to know. You might wonder what's going on, but part of it is attendance. Some of it could be they got in trouble, and the grades. So if you have a way to be able to know what that is, it would be great if they would just share it with you, and some will. But if they don't, and you're comfortable with it, then you need to set up a connection that somehow maybe you can understand what's going on with that. Does that happen in the first few times? No. But eventually that would be something you might want to be able to look into. You've got to build trust with them. And I want them to trust me, and I want to trust my mentee. My mentee is a wonderful young man. He has made great improvement. And so now I want him to trust that I'm going to be there, and that if I don't show up, I want him to trust that I really had something and I didn't just say, you know what, you're not important to me. And so I'm starting with little things for him, and he starts with little things for me. Tomorrow night we're going to a basketball game. So we're doing something that's a non-academic thing at the end of the week, because he likes basketball, and because I'm superintendent, I go to a lot of basketball games. So something I can bring him to, and he can be in a more or less strenuous environment for him, because school to him is very strenuous. We talk about other things. We talk about games. He loves football. We talked about the games from last week. I was surprised, and this is that surprising thing, but he loves football, but he didn't watch the games last weekend. So we talked about why he didn't watch the games. Blaze football loves football, and there's 4 football games, and anybody who loves football most likely didn't miss, not all 4, but saw some of the games, but he didn't, and he said, but my dad watched them. So we talked about why he didn't watch them if he likes it so much, and what he does with his time, and so we're trying to explore some of those other things and what he likes to do. There are challenges, I know his challenges, but if you can find out what your mentee's challenges are. Is it reading? Is it writing? Is it just school in general? Is it life in general? And what role you can play. And sometimes that is just listening to them and talking to them. You heard some wonderful stories up here, and that's the only role you have to play for them. They just want someone that they know is an adult, a caring adult in their world. There are some significant times during the school year, no different than when you were in school. Now, some schools have trimesters. If it's a trimester, then there are 3 times when they get their final grades. You know, if you're comfortable, ask them how they're doing. You know, they may show you their report card as they get closer and closer. In our school, we have 4 times they get grades. We're at the end of the semester. So next week, he'll get his report card. I already know what he has, but we'll talk about his grades and what we can do to improve, and we'll set some goals, and we'll talk about assignments he didn't do, and how we can get even better next time. The missing for, if your mentee struggles in school, probably the biggest thing is, are they, an older student, are they missing assignments? Traditionally, that is the biggest issue, missing assignments. For the younger students, it's, can you read with them? Can you read with them? Can you do the math with them? And real basic things. They will usually have worksheets that they might bring if you're working at school. If you're working during the day, it may just be a conversation with them, and you just may have the child read to you or you read back with the child. Some real basic things. Again, if you are comfortable, at some point you talk about areas of concern, but you always talk about areas of success. And those are for school and or non-school situations. In addition to the help that you're providing, does your mentee get other help? They may go to an after-school program, they may be in summer program. If they're not in those programs, you think it will benefit, you might be able to help them get enrolled or get started in those programs. So don't be afraid, again, to ask someone at the building and say, God, it seems like I'm over here, but you don't think it really could use some more help. Are they in additional programs? So if you can seek out help for them, terrific. This goes back to something I had said earlier, and that is the big thing with organization. Help them to get organized. It's the young mentee who comes to you and he doesn't bring a pencil, he doesn't bring his eraser, he doesn't bring his paper, he doesn't, they come to you with one shoe on, they can't find their mittens, they can't, it goes on and on and on. It's just the life of an unorganized, and we have adults that are that way. So if you can get them a little bit organized, terrific. So organization is huge with many of our students. And like I said with mine, it came down to notebooks and papers this week. We started with that, and we're going to put an organizational structure that's not complicated, that he would like, that works for him. For a student from approximately 3rd grade up, there will be multiple opportunities during the year where they will have large projects. For many of your mentees, and it is for us too as adults, large projects are very overwhelming or can feel very overwhelming. They need it broken down into little parts. It's like you're saying you're going to write a book. Okay, let's just worry about getting a title first. Okay, let's worry about getting that first introductory sentence done. Well, they're getting this project and they know it's going to take 4 weeks. First thing is they want to wait till 3 weeks and 6 days have gone by to start. So that's the first thing, is getting them on the fact that you got to get started and you got to break it into segments so it isn't so overwhelming and chew off little bits at a time. When a 3rd grader has to do a book report and they're thinking, oh, I got to read this whole book, then I got to put this report together, and then I got to put a cover on this, it may seem overwhelming. So if you ever know they're going to do a project and you can help them in that way, then try to break it down for them and do just a checkup on them periodically. That's one of the biggest things, is for them to feel overwhelmed. My mentee had a project he brought to me today. He's had this for 4 weeks. He's not done the thing on it yet. I thought it was just an absolutely really cool project. But for him, it was 4 pages on 2 sides of stuff he had to fill out. He said, wow, it's really long. It's going to take me a long time. So I didn't do it. Now, he had 4 weeks to do it, And if you would have chunked it out, it would have been maybe 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day to do it. But now that it's due at the end of the semester and he's got 8 pages, it seems absolutely overwhelming. So I have to help him as we get into the next semester to break those down so that it bites off little pieces at a time. If I gave you 30 pizzas and said to you, okay, you're going to eat all this, you'd say, oh, that's overwhelming. No, this is how much you're going to eat over the next 30 years. It wouldn't be so overwhelming. So just chunk it out for them as much as you can. And again, you won't see a kindergartner or first grader, but from 3rd grade up, they do get projects. Or they got to write 2 pages. For some of you who have a student who struggles with writing, 2 pages, and then they have to type it out, seems absolutely like they're writing 5 books for them. And I understand that. I'm working in that area. But we're just going to get that first sentence down, and we're going to get another sentence down, or we're going to outline it out. So they can get overwhelmed very easy. And like I said, I'm not saying we as adults don't either. We do as well. So, and they're just our little people. For my mentee, another thing that we just started talking about this week is what happens at home, because he has been excellent this week working at school, but once he goes home, it's like turns the switch off, and at home it doesn't happen. I don't know where he studies at home. We just started talking about getting the papers out so that when I call you, we can talk about your vocabulary and your other stuff. So if it comes up in the conversation, talk about what they do to study at home. Maybe you can set up a thing where they can just work 10 minutes at home. You know, maybe it's 15 minutes home, depending on their age. The traditional rule is 10 minutes per year in school for homework. Now that may seem too much, too little, but if I'm a 2nd grader, it's traditionally thought that you have about 20 minutes of schoolwork at home. If I'm a 6th grader, it's about an hour a day. Now, depending on how fast your student works, what may seem like an hour might take them 3 hours because it's just so burdensome, but that's about the amount of time. Now, when they say they don't have homework, they do have homework. They can read every night. They can write. They can get ready for their tests. A lot of kids, unfortunately, look at tests and exams as, oh, that's a non-homework night, when really it is the biggest amount of homework you need to do. So you can help them and ask them questions related to that. Reading, reading, reading. The only thing you ever did with your student is get them hooked on a book. If you said, you know, I'm not comfortable with anything you have said, Dr. Reader, I don't like any of that, if the only thing you did is said, you know what, I want to read with my mentee, have them read to me, or if you had an older student, I want to connect them into a genre, and we're both going to read a book, and then we're going to talk about the book. If that's all you did, that would be terrific, because that's a skill all of our students need, and we as adults. If you know what reading level your child is at, almost every school can tell you if you don't know. And the reason I say that's important is if you can help them pick out a book. If they're reading a book that's too hard, or you might say, oh, it's a 7th grader, I think they'd like this book. And you bring a book, and unfortunately maybe they're not reading at that level, and it's at a difficult level for them. So if you know what reading level they're at, and you can read a book similar to what their reading level is, that would be terrific. It doesn't mean they read it perfect. They should get about 90% of the words correct when they are reading if they're not at the non-frustration level. If they're getting too many words wrong and they can't get through it, then it's called the frustration level, and it's just too difficult to book. Other things, if you want to help them, and basically in the language arts area, other than the math facts, those are all things you don't need papers. I mean, if you've got a younger child, if you're doing addition facts, subtraction facts, multiplication, division, you can have them write. Those are all things you don't need special papers for. You don't have to have them have an assignment. These are just things all students need to know. And if you're hurting for a topic for practice letter writing, then you can have them write a letter to their parents, their grandparents, their neighbor. They can write a letter to the teacher, to the principal. Just write a letter. They might come to you and say, I'm really mad. What are you mad about? I was mad because we can't go on the snow piles outside because they said they're all icy and someone's going to get hurt. Well, maybe they write a letter to the principal why they think they should be able to go on and how they would be safe about it or something. But you try to grab something that they have interest in and pull that in. If you are comfortable and the student's really having a problem, you can go to the teacher. What I mean by going to the teacher is go to the teacher and talk to them, how can I help the mentee? And And if you're comfortable with that, and it's much easier at the elementary level because a lot of times you might go right to the room and you've met the teacher and everything else. But if your mentee's struggling or you're struggling, helping your mentee, you're like, oh God, I really want to talk to the teacher. The teachers a lot of times can give you an idea or something to try. If you do notice there's something that they need physically, let's say they don't have a book and they're supposed to have a book, if they are struggling with eyes, vision pieces, my mentee right now I think is having some vision issues. So I've been trying to watch and figure out, I am not an optometrist, I don't know, but he has trouble tracking and stuff, so those are things I'm trying to say what's causing his issues. But I'm not the expert, but I'm going to seek someone out to help him, which would be someone from the office. If it's possible, the unusual situations if you normally meet during the day, if it's an option, when they have a class party you can get to, when they have a lunch, some other time that you can reach out to them so it's not the normal routine that you've got into with them, then terrific. Those are just other opportunities for you to see your student in a different light. And the most important thing, and it's the greatest resource you're going to give them, is your time.